The U20 World Cup has officially begun, with the first matchup against Nigeria coming very soon. With the first match of the tournament starting in a few weeks, what will be BLUELOCK's strategy when it comes to taking on this first world-class team? Well, in today's video, I'll be going through my team prediction for the match against Nigeria, giving my thoughts as to who will be played and for what purpose. Now, I just want to preface that this video is simply a prediction, and if I get my prediction wrong, then not much I can do. It's not meant to be treated as fact, just a simple theory. Before I get into the video though, I want to leave a spoiler warning for the latest chapter of the BLUELOCK manga, being chapter 311, and if you have not read it, I would suggest you click off this video now if you wish to not be spoiled. And also, join my Discord server, it's called the Neo Egoist Geeks, and the link to it is down below. Looking at the kind of team that Japan could face from the Nigeria team, I see a lot of people expecting them to be a physically dominant one. Based on my incredibly in-depth research through google.com using all of one source, I found these specific points that highlight the Nigerian U20 team. The common denominator for these descriptions seems to narrow down the players being physically dominant and powerful players who specialize in offensive rushes and counterattacks leveraging physique. So going into the U20 World Cup, Japan could be faced with a very physically dominant opponent. And I also see a lot of people predicting that Nigeria will actually be a pushover, and I couldn't disagree more. Ego stated that Nigeria were the champions of Africa last year, and if you want to take the panel of chapter 303 with the flags as being every country with a new generation 11, then Nigeria would have defeated or at least be better to a relative to Morocco and Egypt, two African countries who are confirmed to or speculated to have a new generation 11. So I honestly doubt that they would be a pushover. As for my prediction of their formation, I don't really have one locked in. I could really see Japan going one of two routes. The first route would be the one of them trying to establish themselves. Japan in previous years in the U20 World Cup and the World Cup in general was absolutely horrible, thus the need for the creation of the BLUELOCK project. So I could really see Ego trying to use the BLUELOCK team to establish themselves as an equally powerful offensive and defensive team. But the other route, which I feel like could be more likely, is the hyper-offensive route. When looking at the former style of the Japan U20 team, they are very Catenaccio inspired, specializing in counterattacks, using the Iron Wall Quartet as their kickstarter. So going into the U20 World Cup, Ego may play the BLUELOCK team to be more crazy and aggressive, aiming for a powerful goal off the start. When it comes to the formation, I think that there are a lot of definite possibilities as to who and how they could play. So for my prediction, I'm going to just try and do a mix. I'm going to predict that they're going to be running a 3 back with 5 in the middle and 2 up front. This will consist of 3 center backs, 3 midfielders, 2 wingers, and 2 center forwards. Now, obviously, without question, I think Gagamaru will be in the net. I've seen a lot of people predict that Gagamaru will actually sit out the first game to rest him for the match against France, but I really feel unsure about Fukaku being in the net. Every time we see Fukaku, he either fails to make a save or has one of his defenders make one for him while he just kinda sits there. Even in the latest chapter, Fukaku was scored on by Isagi with what seemed like ease. So I'm not sure if Gagamaru sitting out is really the best idea. I'm not entirely opposed to the idea of characters sitting out this first game because I do understand the need to rest them for more important matches like in the match against France. 2 players who I think will not be playing in this first game are Chigiri and Zantetsu. Going into the game against France with Loki as what we can assume is their star ace, you're going to want to rest your 2 speedster players who have the potential to keep up with him. That's also not including players like Charles and the speculated new generation 11 who are also on that team. If you have star players who are going to be essential for this big upcoming game, you're probably going to want to rest them. So sitting Gagamaru would make some sense, but at the same time, I don't know if we should really risk Fukaku being in the net. So I would just say get Gagamaru in the goal for security and safe pick purposes. Going into my 3-man defensive line, I think 2 of them are easy locked picks. Those 2 being Aiku and Aryu. Out of anyone on the BLUELOCK Japan roster, those 2 characters are easily the best center back players we have. Aiku in particular is the best defender on the team, like he undeniably is. He has an incredible physique which he uses for winning the ball through physical duels, as well as launching himself into the air to intercept or block shots. His vision is arguably the best on the defensive line, being able to use metavision to see over the field and then link up with others, but he also has the additional ability of reflexive action, which allows for him to move without hesitation. All of these elements together make Aiku the best defender, which we're going to need him on the pitch, assuming that Nigeria is a very physically dominant team. I also think with the specific moment between Karasu and Isagi from the latest chapter, that Aiku will be given the title of captain for this Blue Lock Japan team. This was a fairly predictable outcome given the evidence with his training, as Ego assigned him the task of studying soccer tactics and plays, but also his previous role as the captain of the former U20 team. So I feel like Aiku is an easy lock for this formation, and I would put him as my center defender on the backline. On his right though, I would put Auryu. Auryu's long reach, jumping ability, and overall ability to win matchups with his genetic advantages is one of the reasons I consider him to be one of the best defenders on the team. Plus, with his specific training, he seems to be studying judo, which would make sense for the reason for him to be played during this game. While it was a long time ago, Auryu lost his matchup against Darasova in the World 5 game, not just because of jumping height, but also because of sheer physical ability and strength. He was simply out-muscled and out-jumped. And when it relates to judo, the style that it incorporates into a fighting style allows a smaller or weaker person to win against a stronger or taller one. Now, Auryu, he's 6'5", so calling him short is just kind of funny. But with this physically dominant team, it could be likely that they would be stronger than him. In which case, training in judo allows for him to leverage his size better, even if he isn't stronger than them. Plus, he has the ability to cover a large zone when it relates to defense, so having Auryu there is just a solid option. My other defender may be a wild take, but I think someone like Yoichi could potentially be placed there. Sure, his style is now suited to a defensive midfielder, but I think his incredible stamina and strong core allow for him to be a very sturdy defender. Yoichi on the left side could somewhat act like Neo on the former U20 team, holding someone off from advancing, only for Aiku to rush in and steal the ball in the end. I think that there are definitely more possible options for the starting formation, but for right now, I think this is the best one I can come up with. Now, before I get into the rest of the formation, I want to remind you guys that if you are enjoying this video so far, to leave me a like and subscribe down below to see more awesome Blue Lock content just like this. It costs you guys absolutely nothing, and it helps me out immensely. I'm on the road to 20k subs, so please try and help me get there. And if you want to help me even more, if you were to become a member of the channel, you'd earn some awesome benefits like personal video requests and shoutouts in videos, but you would also get your name mentioned in the Blue Lock New World movie as a contributor to the project, and this also applies to leaving super chats. So like, subscribe, and become a member today to show your support for me and my content, and let's try to get to 20k. Now, looking at my formation, I have one defensive midfielder and two offensive midfielders. For my defensive midfielder, I think this is the most obvious pick. I'm taking Karasu Tabito. Now, Karasu I think will be played in this game for numerous reasons. I think the little spout that Karasu and Isagi had in the latest chapter could eventually tease a conflict between the two players going into the U20 World Cup. Now, this moment could have just been used to highlight Aiku as the captain of the team, but I feel like it could lead into something more prevalent. But overall, Karasu is by far the best defensive midfielder on the Blue Lock Japan team. His playmaking skills and link-up plays in the PXG game let Charles play in the best way possible for him, and with his constant pressing, he was a serious defensive presence on the team. Not even mentioning his awakening of Metavision, Karasu is definitely a solid pick on the defensive line. With his position, he has the ability to draw back to make the situation a 4-back, but also rush up the field to assist other midfielders or goal scorers. As much as I do not like Karasu, as a lot of you guys are aware of, I think him not playing in the first U20 World Cup match would be a huge mistake. As for my two offensive midfielders, I think having both Hiyori and Ryo in these positions is the best option for the team. Hiyori currently is one of the best playmakers and midfielders on the Blue Lock Japan team. Some people argue that he actually holds the title of best on the team, and it's pretty clear to see why. Even unmotivated, Hiyori's passes were comparable to Sai in the match against the former Japan U20 team, and his link-ups with Karasu made his passing and playmaking easier. Hiyori and Karasu on the pitch at the same time would also lead to the potential opportunity to have more chemical reactions together, which can lead to better goal scoring chances for the team. Not to mention Hiyori's application of metavision and reflexive passing make him a great player when it comes to creating opportunities for the strikers. Ryo on the other hand would be played due to versatility and narrative importance. By being able to copy any of the other players on the Blue Lock Japan team thanks to his master copy training, I think Ryo is an easy pick simply because of his versatility. Not to mention, Ryo hasn't been shown in a lot of the more recent chapters, being the only member of the Blue Lock Japan team who wasn't seen in chapter 311. So I feel like Ryo playing is a definite possibility. But with his position and copying ability, he can fill any role that is needed for the team, be it a goal scorer or a playmaker. At some point, I think that Ryo is definitely going to score a goal and make an assist for the team in the same game. So you guys better be ready because my GOAT is 100% going to show off. Next, my forward line is a little weird, so let me start by talking about the left side. On my left wing, I have Bachira as our main dribbler. Like I just said, Bachara is our narrative dribbler of the team, and with his new Jenga X Monster dribbling style, I feel like having him on the wing to tear up the defensive line with his plays just makes a lot of sense. We could get a situation similar to the Bachara vs Kunigami matchup in the Barcha game, as Bachara dribbles around a very physically dominant player, and I think it would be very cool to see. But Bachara is also here because he has the ability to score goals for himself, and also his chemistry with the players in the center forward positions. For my left center forward, I would easily put Rain here. Rain is by far the best individual talent in Blue Lock, and while a lot of people are worried about his performances, I think that Rain will be fine in the U20 World Cup. Based on what his training appears to be like in the wording from Ego, Rain appears to be learning how to control his Destroyer mode to a more manageable degree. We saw from his performances in the match against Bayern Munich that Destroyer mode Rain is easily the strongest player in the U20 category from the new Egoist League, not including the Master Strikers. But the major issue that arose from that game was his desire to destroy Isagi over simply winning the game. We see through his consistent moments of crashing into Isagi that he would rather destroy Isagi than win the game as a whole, and that made a lot of people worried for his performances going into the U20 World Cup. I'm not one of those though. I trust Ego's training, and I believe that Rain's Destroyer mode will become more manageable going into the U20 World Cup. Speaking on Isagi though, he is my other center forward. I think having Isagi on the center forward to stoke Rain, but also due to his own skills, just makes a lot of sense. He and Rain were tied for the #1 position of Blue Lock. And with his training at Bayern Munich, unlocking metavision, developing semi-ambidexterity, as well as understanding the trigger for his true flow state, Isagi truly deserves to be in that position. I know that some people are worried that with him as a center forward that we will miss out on some of Isagi's incredible defensive plays, but I wouldn't stress too much on it. Isagi's defensive plays were great, but with him now upfield, we now get the chance to have our defenders get an actual performance, as opposed to being nobodies like Birkenstock on Bayern Munich. Plus, you guys do realize that Isagi will not be a center forward for every single game. There will definitely be formations where he plays as an offensive midfielder. But another reason that I have Isagi as a center forward comes from his partner on the right wing, that being Corona Ranze. Now, I know a lot of people, myself included, are a little skeptical about Corona playing this high up on the wing. I mean, excluding Manshan City, Corona was burnt out or cramped up when it came to linking up with Isagi in the Ubers game or in the PXG game. But thanks to his training to likely boost his stamina, you'd be able to have him play for longer periods of time. Not to mention having Planet Hotline starting the U20 World Cup just seems to make the most amount of sense because of how powerful it is as a chemical reaction. You also have Hiyori in the midfield to link up with Isagi if needed, possibly giving us the galactic hotline that we have all been wanting to see. But all in all, this is my formation to take on the Nigerian team. We don't know too much about them just yet, but based on speculation, I think that this formation can handle them. Now, if you thought we were done with this video, we aren't even close to finished because we have a lot of substitutions to talk about. When I think about the possibility of substitutions, there are 4 characters that I could see being subbed on to play against Nigeria. Those being Kunigami, Nico, Shido, and Bato. So let's just go down the list. Kunigami is a player that I could see either being subbed on to strengthen the offensive line or help out on defense. If we needed more offensive power, I could totally see Kunigami swapping in for Corona and taking Isagi's spot in the center forward, pushing him out onto the wing. Kunigami's physique and strength is easily the best in the Blue Lock project, and with his ambidexterity, he has the capability to score using either leg at 100% power. Isagi even quoted Kunigami as being a striker with the potential to score goals from anywhere, a striker with 0 weaknesses. Now, obviously this was a little bit over-exaggerated, but Kunigami, despite the fraud allegations, is still an incredibly powerful goal scorer. The other possibility I could see him subbed in for is as a second defensive midfielder alongside Karasu, swapping in for Hiyori and dropping back. With Ryo's ability to copy whoever is needed, Hiyori getting subbed off isn't the most insane issue here. Not to mention with my prediction for the France game being that Karasu and Hiyori will be needed to stop Charles, having Hiyori subbed off to rest isn't the craziest thing. Looking at Kunigami's training assigned by Ego, he was tasked to become the ultimate physical combat warrior, to which we see him training by boxing. In my mind, given his performance in the PXG game, I think Kunigami would be trained to be this man marker, shutting down specific players if needed. I mean, he definitely has the ability to do that as we saw with Shido. So if Kunigami were to sub on, extra firepower on the offensive line, or a solid man marker on the defensive line seem to be the best 2 options for him. Looking at Nico though, he's one of the more least likely characters of the 4 here to sub on. However, if he were to sub on, I do have an idea as to how he would be played. I think he would sub in for Karasu during this game as a defensive midfielder. It's for a similar reason to Kunigami with Hiyori. As my prediction for the game against France, I do think Karasu will be a core player in shutting down Charles. While subbing Nico on would lose the backline some actual physical strength in relation to their defensive power, Nico's usage would be slightly different. Nico's ability as a defensive midfielder allows him to use his metavision more consistently to link up passes and plays with a key striker, even being able to hold off the #1 striker in the world while still being able to connect a pass. If he were to sub on, it would be for Karasu as a defensive midfielder, but I could also see him playing in the backline where Yoichi would be as a center back. I've always just believed Nico to be a better defensive midfielder than he is a center back, but maybe that's just me. This was mostly due to his lack of strength and his weak frame, but thanks to Ego's training, Nico was shown lifting weights, so maybe he'll come back to us in the series buff as hell. I don't know. Looking at Shido, he would be subbed on for his one key trait that he consistently displays every time he plays, his ability to score a goal very fast. Whenever you look at the games that Shido performs in, he is usually the first person to score a goal on his team. This was shown in the 3rd selection with his no-looker goal and in the new Igua's League with his dragon header. The only exception to that rule is the U20 game because Shido wasn't even played for the first half of that game. But when he did sub on, Shido not only managed to score a goal, but score 2 goals and enter flow within 15 minutes of being subbed on the pitch. So I could see BLUELOCK being in a position where they need to score a goal very quickly, in which case Shido would sub in for Bachara on the left wing. I would say you could put Shido in on the right wing as a substitution for Corona, but I feel like the deadliness of Isagi x Corona outweighs the loss that would be received if Isagi were to sub in for him. As for Bada though, he is a character that I would say would swap out for Corona on the right wing. However, I would actually push Isagi to the wing where Corona is and move Bada to center forward. I think the ability to have Bada and Isagi in close proximity to each other would stoke an evolution for the team, along with having Hiyori still backing Isagi. Bada's training to strengthen his body and mind through the training of American football also gives me the idea that Bada would be a good pick to deal with the more physically powerful Nigerian players. I do think at some point out of the potential subs, that Bada and Shido are the most likely to score a goal if they were to be subbed on. So going into the next game, if Shido or Bada are starting members or substitutions, I 100% think that they are going to score a goal. But that was just my prediction for the BLUELOCK Japan vs Nigeria match for the first round of the U20 World Cup. Looking at my formation again, we have Gagamaru in the goal, you have Raichi, Aiku, and Aryu who would form my defensive line, positioned from the left to right to form a 3-man backline, with Karasu existing slightly above them as my defensive midfielder. I'd have Hiyori and Ryo as my offensive midfielders, with Bachara and Corona out on my wings, along with Rin and Isagi on my front line as my center forwards. For substitutions, I'd have Kunigami who would sub in for Corona and shift to the center forward position, with Isagi dropping to the wing, or I would have him swap in for Hiyori and drop back to the defensive midfielder position along with Karasu. I would have Nico swap in for Karasu as a defensive midfielder or Raichi as a center back to hold our defensive line. I'd have Shido sub in for Bachara on the left wing as a goal scorer, and I would have Bado swap in for Corona and shift to the center forward position, with Isagi dropping to the wing again. I do understand the rule to where you can only have 3 substitutions going into a game. However, I hope you understand that these 4 players are just ones that I think could act as subs going into the next game, not that all 4 subs would happen. But that was just my formation and prediction. I do want to remind you guys though that this video is simply just my prediction on the formation. It is not meant to be taken as fact that this would 100% happen, it's just a theory. But aside from that, I hope you guys did enjoy this video and will continue to enjoy it in the future. I just want to say thank you so much to all the members on my channel who help support me and my content. And if you wish to earn some awesome benefits like they do, and even get your name mentioned in the BLUELOCK New World movie, become a member yourself and help support me moving forward. And just a final reminder to join my Discord server if you're ever interested in getting any more involved with our amazing community. As for the question of the video though, what are your predictions for the BLUELOCK Japan vs Nigeria match? Leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. And like always, thank you all for watching, like and subscribe to see more awesome BLUELOCK content just like this.